Roehampton has a fascinating history. In the 18th century, a series of villas were built by Archer and Wyatt and Chambers and a number of others. And then in the 20th century, the LCC built what is considered to be one of the best social housing schemes, the Alton West Estate. Our approach was very much drawing on these two histories, the 18th century history or tradition and the 20th century tradition, both in terms of the typology of the buildings that we were making, the planning of the buildings, but also in their construction and the materials. The 18th century buildings being load-bearing brick, masonry, and the 20th century buildings being concrete frames. Student housing has become quite industrialised. There's a huge market for it, for private developers. But actually, even if you go back to the post-war student housing, it's quite repetitive. And what we really wanted to avoid was a kind of sausage of rooms or a tower of rooms. And instead, it's the question of how you create a community. But actually it's how you relate, in this context, the community to the remarkable landscape, and then how you relate the individual to the community in the remarkable landscape. And so the answer to that, of course, lies in history and lies in typology. And that's really what generated the plans and the forms of our buildings. One of the joys of working in this context, in the context of a parkland and of a garden, is its capacity to act as a foil to architecture, and particularly in the field boundary, the row of trees that sits roughly in the middle of the site. And there is a delight in the juxtaposition of what is really a brutalist building, heavy concrete brick, deep reveals, heavy shadows, this gravity, and then the juxtaposition of these hundreds of year old mature trees, and the trunks of those trees and the great canopies and leaves and so on.